Thank you. Maybe you ought to visit some more of those factories, because that's not what I'm hearing. And, we've lost 100,000 plus manufacturing jobs during this time period, too. So what these companies are saying is very simple. We need to get our costs down. Yes, we can compete, and we can win in the global marketplace, but not if our government continues to burden us, state government and federal government. And that's what's happening. I had a guy tell me yesterday, who is with Philpott Rubber and Plastics here, Northeast Ohio. And this is a employee-owned company. And they're trying to compete in the global marketplace. And again, he said, just don't pull the rug out from under us. Why does the government continue to send us higher and higher costs? Their health care costs are skyrocketing. They're looking at taxes being raised at year end. Lieutenant Governor talked about the medical device companies a second ago. He supported in the health care bill raising taxes on Ohio's medical device companies. Talk to these companies. You ought to go visit them, because what they tell me is they're getting ready to lay off workers because they can't afford higher taxes and be able to compete in the global marketplace and stay here in Ohio.
Earlier today, audience members were again invited to write down a question they would like me to ask. I've chosen another one. I neglected to thank Jonathan from Cleveland for the last question, so I will thank Brian from Shaker Heights for this one. The Brookings Institution yesterday released a report stating that through the recession, poverty has been growing faster in the suburbs of metropolitan areas than in central cities. In your view, what role should the federal government play in assisting families, children, and individuals in poverty, and what can be done to reduce the growing number of people finding themselves in this situation? And you again have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. We begin with Mr. Portman.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Well, poverty has increased in Ohio, as has homelessness. We have increasing problems of trying to provide that safety net. Food stamps has increased dramatically here in Ohio, and the safety net is necessary. But the much better answer is to find jobs and opportunities. When you have over 10% unemployment, when the prospects for future employment look bad, and there was another report out today, this was a PNC study. They looked at businesses all over Ohio, and those businesses said that the outlook for Ohio is worse than the outlook for other states around the country. So the ultimate answer is to provide opportunities and jobs for these people. I talked about the young woman who I met at the Arby's who was looking for a fast food job because she couldn't find a clerical job. When she came to the RV, I told her what I was doing, why I was running. She wanted to see the jobs plan. We gave her that. I gave her some ideas of some places to call locally, but she'd already called all those places. And I asked her, I said, what are you going to do? She said, well, my husband and I are trying to figure that out. And you know what we're thinking about doing? Leaving Ohio. And you find this all over our state. Of the young people who come here to Ohio, as I said earlier, to the best colleges and universities in the country, 79% of them are leaving Ohio to go to another state after they graduate. Over 50% of Ohio kids who go to Ohio colleges and universities are now leaving Ohio. This is the best and brightest. This is our future. These are the people who we need to grow this economy, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, to assure that we don't have those high levels of poverty and homelessness.
Mr. Fisher, you have 1.5 minutes.
Well, there are a lot of differences between Congressman Portman and me, Ohio and Washington, Main Street, Wall Street, export goods, export jobs. But after listening to him today, I want to add another one, optimist, pessimist. If you want to send a pessimist to D.C., he's proved he's your man. I can tell you right now that people are hurting, but they don't want to hear the whining and the complaining. I'll tell you what they want to hear. They want to hear that you're on the ground working every single day. You know, during the 7 years that Congressman Portman was a lobbyist for foreign countries and a congressman and George Bush's trade advisor and budget director, I'll tell you what I was doing. I was right here in Cleveland, in my backyard, running a place called the Center for Families and Children, helping struggling families get back on their feet, helping a father understand that having a child doesn't make you a man, taking care of a child makes you a man, helping young men and women who come from tough neighborhoods and even more violent homes get a sense of self-respect and dignity. Let's talk about that. You know, I don't want to aspire to be a safety net nation. I want to aspire to be an economic ladder nation. So once we have them in the safety net, our work begins, it doesn't end. And that's what we did at the Center for Families and Children. I would suggest that Congressman Portman, after 20 years, has lost touch with how it's done. It's talking to people face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and understanding who they are, why they're hurting, and how to help them. And that's what I've done.
Joe Froelich, your question now to Mr. Fisher for a 2-minute answer.
I'm going to build a little bit on what you just said. You've made a lot, Mr. Fisher, in this campaign of Mr. Portman's experiences in Washington. They call him the Washington Insider. But you've had a very long career yourself in Ohio politics. You were in the legislature, you were in the Attorney General, you were the Attorney General, you ran for governor, you've been the Lieutenant Governor. Aren't you as much of a political insider as he is, and perhaps in a different party? And on a broader scale, what's wrong with being a political insider and knowing how government operates?
Well, let's start with the second question first. If there is one anger I see all around Ohio, it's not against Republicans or Democrats. It's against Washington that has these ridiculous rules like the filibuster that says that one senator can stop unemployment compensation for millions of Americans, automatic pay raises, secret holds on legislation. He had the chance to change those rules. He's a part of the rules. He was there for 20 years. He had his chance. It's no accident or coincidence that he's getting more money than any candidate in the country from Washington lobbyists. The bottom line is it's not so much whether you serve, it's who you serve. Now, if I really thought he was serving that woman at Arby, I might have a different view. I think he's serving the lobbyists, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Wall Street, the insurance industry, which is why he's able to put his ads on tonight and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. So service is great. But I also think it makes some sense to spend a little time out of it, too. Yes, I served for 10 years in the legislature and wrote Ohio's missing children law, Ohio's hate crime law. I served as Attorney General and closed drug houses around the state, but I also was out of public office for 12 years, more than a decade. And for most of those years, running a place that changed people's lives. I'm proud of my service, but I'm proud especially that I've served in the nonprofit sector, the private sector, the public sector, the executive branch, the legislative branch, that I've represented small businesses as a lawyer. I think you want people to go to D.C. who are not career politicians, who haven't been in the same place for a long time and often forget why they went there and who they are.
Mr. Portman, 1 minute for response.
Well, Joe, you're right. Lieutenant Governor Fisher has a long career in public service. In fact, he first ran for office back when I was getting out of college, and disco was still cool. I mean, it was 1980.
It is still cool.
Among some. So, you know, he's been a state representative, he's been a state senator, he's been an attorney general, he's run for about every office in Ohio. He's run 5 times for office statewide in the state of Ohio. I've never done that. So for him to stand here today and say, you know, Portman's political and I'm not, I mean, again, it goes to what I talked about right at the beginning. Let's cut through all this. He doesn't want to talk about his record. And, you know, I can see why. Because it's a record of failure for Ohio's workers. I mean, 400,000 jobs lost, not being there when Ohio's workers needed him. And he doesn't want to talk about the policies he's supporting because they're not working for Ohio. I haven't heard him talk about the stimulus bill. I haven't heard him talk about the health care bill, all these things that he supports that are taking us back, not forwards. Those should be the issues we're discussing today.
And a reminder, the applause and the noise takes away time from your candidate, so please save your applause. We're almost done. Mr. Bill Hershey has a question for Mr. Portman with a 2-minute answer.
Mr. Portman, at the Toledo debate, you said you do not support privatizing Social Security. However, you have made comments in the past that supported President George W. Bush's proposal to allow Americans to put part of their Social Security contributions into private accounts. Have you changed your position?
Well, as I said in Toledo, we need to strengthen and preserve Social Security. And unfortunately, in this campaign, it's been all about politics. Every day, Lieutenant Governor Fisher makes another attack on Social Security. And as I said in Toledo, even though it's getting close to Halloween, it's time to stop scaring seniors.